Ladies and gentlemen, I am here today to introduce an incredible man, soldier, and hero. Many of you know, or many of you will recall, that Command Sergeant Major Bennie G. Adkins was our keynote speaker at the Atlanta History Center for our 2015 Veterans Day salute to Vietnam veterans. It was Johanna's and my privilege to escort Bennie and his family during this ceremony. Since then, we have been honored to be involved with Bennie and his foundation. Command Sergeant Major Bennie G. Adkins was drafted into the Army in December of 1956 at the age of 22 from Waurika, Oklahoma. Upon completion of his initial training at Fort Bliss, Texas, he was assigned as an administrative clerk typist to a garrison in Gießen, Germany, with a follow-on assignment to the 2nd Infantry Division at Fort Benning, Georgia. After attending airborne school, he volunteered for Special Forces in 1961. He served with the Special Forces for more than 13 years with the 7th, 3rd, 6th, and 5th Special Forces groups airborne. While in the Special Forces, he deployed to the Republic of Vietnam for 3 non-consecutive tours. His first tour in the Republic of Vietnam lasted from February of 1963 to August of 1963. His second tour of duty in Vietnam lasted from September of 65 to September of 66. His final tour in Vietnam lasted from January of 1971 through December of 1971. After Vietnam, Adkins served as a first sergeant for the Army Garrison Communications Command in Fort Huachuca, Arizona. He then joined Class number 3 of the Army Sergeants Majors Academy in El Paso, Texas. After graduation, Adkins served with the Special Forces at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then led training at Fort Sherman's Jungle School in the Panama Canal Zone. He retired from the Army in 1978. Adkins earned his bachelor's degree from Troy State University in 1979. He earned his master's degree in education in 1982, and then a second master's degree in management in 1988, all from Troy State University. Simultaneous to pursuing his degree programs, he established the Adkins Accounting Services, Inc. in Auburn, Alabama, serving as its CEO for 22 years. He also taught night classes at Alabama Southern Union Junior College for 10 years and at the Auburn University for 6 years. Adkins has been married to his wife, Mary, for 59 years, and together they have raised 5 children. Adkins' previous awards and decorations include the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star Medal with 1 bronze oak leaf cluster and V device, the Purple Heart with 2 bronze oak leaf clusters, the Army Commendation Medal, the Army Good Conduct Medal with bronze clasp and 5 loops, the National Defense Service Medal, the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, the Vietnam Service Medal with 1 Silver Service Star and 1 Bronze Service Star, the Presidential Unit Citation, the Meritorious Unit Citation, the Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal with 60 device, the Republic of Vietnam Bravery Medal with Brass Star, the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross with Bronze Star, the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross Unit Citation with Palm device, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Vietnamese Parachutist Badge with 2 awards, the Expert Badge with rifle and pistol bars, the Sharpshooter Badge with carbine bar, and the Marksman Badge with a machine gun bar. Command Sergeant Major Bennie G. Adkins distinguished himself during 38 hours of close combat fighting against enemy forces on March 9th to 12th in 1966. At that time, then Sergeant First Class Adkins was serving as an intelligence sergeant with Detachment A-102, 5th Special Forces Group, 1st Special Forces at Camp Shau in the Republic of Vietnam. For his heroic actions in this battle, Command Sergeant Major Bennie Adkins received the Congressional Medal of Honor on September the 15th, 2014 at the White House, presented by the President of the United States. Bennie and his daughter Mary Ann Blake are visiting today from their hometown of Opelika, Alabama. Bennie has written a book about his experience during this battle, A Tiger Among Us, a great book that may turn into a movie. Be sure to get your signed copy after the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome me, the Medal of Honor recipient, Command Sergeant Major Bennie Adkins.
I'll tell you what, please take your seats. That's I'm a very humbled individual. Tell you what, it's certainly humbling to wear a Medal of Honor when better than 30 million have served our great country with honor and distinction. And at the present time today, there's 73 living Medal of Honor recipients. And to be one of those is super, super humbling. And you always say, why me? Since why did I survive and the individuals on each side of me paid the ultimate price? So with this, I feel like that I am a teenager today at 84. And with this, I had the pleasure last year of traveling our great country and speaking, and I traveled a little better than 250 days last year. And this year I'm going to settle in and just do about 240. So with this, I spent a little time in the military. And first of all, see, there's a story goes with this. I was in college, and I was a little more interested in the good-looking girls than I was in the academics. So my father said, "Did you know, I think I may be wasting some money right at the present time on sending you to school." So I dropped out of school, and I was not unemployed for a long period of time, because at that time period, the minute you come out of college, you went immediately to the head of the draft list. So I was drafted in the military, and you know, the Army decided that I should be a clerk typist. Well, let's face it, there's not a thing wrong with being a clerk typist. However, it didn't quite fit my needs. So I heard of an organization called the infantry, and I said, I think maybe I'll try the infantry just a little, and spent a little time at Fort Benning, Georgia, and really learned what was going on in the military. And then I heard of an organization called Special Forces. Well, I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I just had too much pride to quit. So I spent a year and a half on learning to be a Special Forces soldier and getting to wear that green beret. And with that, like I said, at that time period, and this was in early 1961, in that time period I was one of 3% that made it through the class that I was assigned to. And within in our Special Forces at that time period, we had to do training in weapons. This is both in the heavy weapons and light weapons. Then we had some communications training. This was as AM and FM radios, and at that time period, we had to do a little international Morse code and helped develop a system then called a burst system, where you would do an international Morse code. You would put it on the radio at 200 words per minute. Then when you receive it, you could slow it down and take it and slow it down and copy. at the speed that you needed to do this. And the idea behind that was that many of the militaries throughout the country had direction finding, and if you was on that key too long, there was going to be some. They would send you a little invitation with some artillery coming, and this was so. I had the pleasure of serving in Special Forces, and I was sent to the country of Vietnam in early 1963, and I was sent there in civilian clothes, and they sent me down to Saigon at that time period, and they said I needed international driver's license. Well, 2 days later, I made a parachute jump into a mountain-north village into Vietnam, and we had two old World War II deuce-and-a-half trucks that wouldn't run, and the village chief had a little donkey. So that was the international driver's license I needed. But the reason I bring that up, at 9 years later and 18 body wounds in that country, my picture with the international driver's license shown up with the North Vietnamese Army. So much for me, dead or alive. So they asked me today, said, would you like to go back to Vietnam? No, the bounty may still be good. So with this, then the American forces was increasing rapidly in South Vietnam, and so they decided I need to go back again into the country in 1963, and in 1965, and then sent a little trip in 1965, and they assigned me to a Special Forces camp, and they Sergeant Major come after me and said, Ben, I'm going to want you to be my intel sergeant. Then, so I reported to the Sergeant Major about 2 days later, and he said, Benny, I have a problem. Said, old Earl Petty got hit yesterday, and said, I'm going to have to send you out to A102. And I said, well, where is A102? He said, it's a little old place in the Shau Valley. He said, you won't mind that. Well, I'll tell you what, I went into this A-team, and it seemed like I was there, 100, 150 days. And it seemed like every day there I was shot at some way by the North Vietnamese. They were, I think, just zeroing the weapons and getting ready. So really, then in 1966, they decided we didn't need to be there anymore and put a full division on us. And after a 38-hour battle, we had 17 Special Forces in there. All of us were wounded, most of us multi-wounded, and unfortunately 5 paid the ultimate price. And they decided at that time period that we'd been in the battle long enough, and they told us that we had to close the camp. So myself and the executive officer went back in to pick up one of the Americans that was wounded on a stretcher. When we come out, we didn't have a ride, so we had to hit the jungle again, and I was in that jungle about 48 hours. Being in that jungle, the North Vietnamese were chasing us, and well, keep in mind, now this was a triple canopy type jungle, and North Vietnamese soldiers were chasing us. And I was fortunate enough, probably couldn't get by with it today, but I had a little weapon that I had worked with. It was an old Browning Browning pump shotgun, and I'd cut the stock off real short, put a little extra strap on it, and then I'd cut the barrel about here. And I utilized a double-aught buckshot with this. And, you know, from a distance from about here to this flag, you could blow a door down with this. Well, this was an ideal weapon in the jungle. But I had this weapon with me, and so I decided that I needed to communicate with an aircraft. So I took this weapon and made an antenna with this weapon, stood in water, and communicated with an aircraft. They come in to pick us up, and dogs, they didn't shoot the aircraft down. So we had to go again, and the North Vietnamese soldiers had us completely surrounded this night, and it looked like things was really, really bad for us. And all at once, things got quiet. There was all kinds of noises. And then some eyes and about a 400-pound Indonesian tiger stalked us. This tiger had been feeding off the dead bodies. And this tiger stalked us to the point that these North Vietnamese soldiers were more afraid of the tiger than they were us. They backed off, and we had room to get away. So made it out, and the next day the weather broke. They spent a little bit of time patching us up, and a short time later I was in another site doing the same thing. And then I had the pleasure of serving our country again in 1970 and 71. They sent me back for another year in Vietnam, and this time I spent the time in an organization called the Studies and Observation Group. This was an organization that didn't exist, and did not exist for 40-something years. And what we were doing is still unknown. And thankfully, I did survive this, but the unfortunate part about the Saug people, some way they come up with a wounded rate of about 125%. And I know at one particular period of time involving about 40,000 North Vietnamese soldiers were chasing these Saug people, even to the point, unfortunately, they wounded a couple. They cut their stomachs open while they were still alive, poured gasoline in them, and set them afire. So we had decided that we would not be taken prisoner. And thankfully, I did survive this year, and then, like I said, they pulled me back into the States, and they decided they wasn't quite finished with me at that time period, so they decided that I would run special operations all over the world. Then I was working special operations, and at that time period, my record shown that I was in 177 different countries, and most of those as an uninvited guest. So again, I did survive this, and then they decided after a period of time that they wanted to make me a command sergeant major, and I was fortunate enough to go to class number 3 of the Sergeant Major's Academy, and then, like I said, I worked as a command sergeant major and had the privilege of being the command sergeant major of the jungle schools in Panama, and this was a very my terminal type of assignment for the military. And Since that period of time, I had the pleasure of operating some businesses here in the U.S. and doing some teaching and taught both at a junior college and a major university. And this I have finished my formal education, which I had done like I said, bachelor's degree, a couple of master's degree, and they decided after a period of time I needed a doctorate of law. I don't know why I needed a doctorate of law, but unless it maybe to keep me out of trouble. But then, with this in mind, we decided at that time period that they decided that they were going to declassify what we were doing. They declassified the information, and after 48 years, there was could do some additional statements and tell what we were really doing, and they decided then that I would be one of the individuals to wear this Medal of Honor. And with this, I feel now that it's my duty to travel throughout and to support our better than 30 million who have served this great country. And so, with this, I have developed a foundation. My foundation is a nonprofit type of an organization, and what I'm doing at this time, the board of directors of my foundation has decided that we'll award scholarships. This year, the scholarships are going to the Special Forces enlisted personnel that are transitioning from service. The reason behind this is that some of those have been in combat off and on for about the last 17 or 18 years. And let's face it, they, even though they're highly skilled, highly trained individuals, they're still suffering from the post-traumatic stress disorders. And this is something that I look forward to. I've written a book. I insisted in the 2.5 years that working with the book, I insisted that everything in the book be true and accurate. And we decided that the title of the book should be A Tiger Among Us. And this proceeds from this book is going into the foundation, and it will be doing scholarships. So with this, I appreciate your hospitality here, and may God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you, sir. Good to see you, sir.
We have a like this. Would you be willing to take a couple of questions, Command Sergeant Major?
It'd be my pleasure.
Did I understand you to say that the reason the Medal of Honor was awarded just recently was it took that long for the SOG files to get declassified?
That is correct, yes.
And what was the connection then between the SOG files and the award?
The fact that many of the members, the living members that was in the battle with me also was with SOG.
Command Sergeant Major, just want to let you know that Johns Creek Veteran Association has bought the ball at heels, and we're going to be installing it very soon. You opened the that for us about 1.5 years ago. We were proud to have you there, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is not a question, Command Sergeant Major. I was, excuse me, a Armored Cav platoon leader as part of the 3rd of the 5th Armored Cav attached to the 101st Airborne Division in 1969, who was then in the Shau Valley. As we were patrolling, my platoon and I walked through the remains of your camp and saw the aircraft that was shot down. Sir, I would like to salute you and all of those who have served with you.
Thank you for your presentation. This is a little off topic, but I just kind of wondered how you got to the point that you were prepared to do this duty. How'd you grow up? What kind of family did you have? Were you hunting critters?
Did you know, I had the pleasure of being born and raised in a Oklahoma farm, and was a large family, and learned one thing, that we learned how to work. We learned how to be conservative, and I feel like that this was something that probably carried even into my military, to the point, like I said, I joined an organization, and all I would have to do is just said, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, and I could have walked away. But I had too much pride to do that, and I did survive, and I think probably there may be another Special Forces or two here in the audience, and they can acknowledge what we went through in the initial training. And with that, yes, I feel like that I think everyone has a certain amount of integrity and a certain amount of religious activities that is necessary to survive, especially in a world of an elite type of organizations. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Major, I don't know whether you ever heard about this or not, but I didn't think you were stationed around the Pleiku area. I didn't hear that. But one morning, I commanded a Armored Cav troop there. One morning I got up and my gun platoon leader said, we're missing a 20 millimeter cannon off a Cobra helicopter. Well, checked out, sure enough, he's right. I called the CID. They found out who got it. It was a guy across the airfield, an SOG guy, stole my 20 millimeter. He also stole the carriage up an artillery outfit from 105 to make him a thing to go across into Laos. I probably shouldn't have said that, but somewhere over there. When I found out what he's doing, I refused to prefer charges, and that made the CID very unhappy. But there's some criminal running around here loose in your organization.
Please, maybe you're not looking for that equipment.
I have a question. You were wounded 18 times in the Shau Valley. I'm over here. Shau Valley, was that 18 times like all at once, or was this different engagements?
This was in a 38-hour battle and a 48-hour escape and evasion.
How do you function with 18 wounds? How do you function with 18 wounds?
On the hospital ship for 18 wounds.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You knew that you didn't want to stop. If you stopped during that time period, the North Vietnamese get a hold of you, and you know that that's a horrible way to go.
I got a question. Sergeant Major, I know why your book is named "There Is a Tiger Amongst Us," but I want to know the truth. Since that time, have you been to a zoo?
Did you know, maybe I better not answer that.
As Sergeant Major, I was a helicopter pilot with the 101st, and before I became a scout, I did insertions, what we call now Command and Control North. And did you ever wear the North Vietnamese uniforms? Because I remember one insertion when we were picking up some guys, they were SOG team members, and they had the North Vietnamese outfits on. Did your team ever wear any of those?
You know, congratulations on the 101st. That's a fine organization, and it still is today. One thing that had the pleasure of helping develop was the halo type work, this high altitude lower, and when you make a parachute jump and you're up a little better than 6 miles, and you get out of that airplane up 6 miles high and fall for 2.5, 3 minutes before you open, it's about 50 below up there when you get out, and that'll get your attention in a hurry. So with that, I had the pleasure of surviving 3,000 parachute jumps, and I want.
Sergeant Major.
And I'm just a beginner.
Sergeant Major, I had the pleasure of spending a day and an evening with you when you spoke at the History Center and read your bio, and I want everybody here to know that although he was wounded 18 times, during that battle he fired a pistol, a rifle, a machine gun, a mortar, and oh, by the way, his shotgun. And when the U.S. retook that base, he got credit for 144 kills. That's a warrior right there.
Command Sergeant Major, it's a real privilege to be in your presence, and thank you for your presentation today. I wanted to ask you about Bennie Fisher, another Medal of Honor winner, and from the Shau Valley. Have you met him, and where were you at the time when he came in?
I tell you what, I hate to interrupt you, but I didn't quite understand your question, sir.
Oh, I was asking about Bennie Fisher. Bennie Fisher was an A1E pilot that came in.
Colonel, yes. Here's what happened. This was he was a pilot of the old A1Es. This is a type of the old slow, reliable prop type of aircraft. And unfortunately, his wingman was shot down and crashed down onto our airstrip while the battle was going on. So Bennie Fisher decided to go in and pick up his down pilot at that time period. He landed, taxied down, opened the cockpit, let Major Myers jump right into the aircraft, and got the aircraft out of the valley again, and it was down in Pensacola, Florida, at the museum there for a while, and had 20-something rounds was hit during that time. So he was certainly, he did get the Medal of Honor there, and certainly deserving.
Anyone else?
After that rescue, they tried to repeat the airmen getting into the A1, and they couldn't do it. Is that correct?
It was, yes, I was recommended for the medal at that time period, and the bottom line was that it was delayed. It was delayed because some of the statements from the personnel was classified, and they couldn't couldn't get all the information. Once it was declassified, some 48 years later, they decided then that that would change the law, and I was fortunate enough to receive the medal at that time period, sir.
I'm going to get him to repeat the question. I don't think you heard the question well.
What?
Can you repeat the question?
I didn't. If I didn't hear you, well, that's just one of the things.
Okay, when the A1E landed and picked up his wingman, he
The
jumped.
wingman at that time period was a major by the name, an Air Force major by the name of Myers. And
Yes, sir, what I'm asking, they tried to repeat that when they got back to the base or sometime later, and they could not figure out how the major got into the cockpit. They could not do it again. You remember that?
That is my understanding, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Command Sergeant Major, on behalf of the Atlanta Vietnam Veterans Business Association, our challenge coin, the backside is proud, patriotic, professional. That certainly describes you and your talk to us today. Thank you. It's been an honor to be with you.
My pleasure, sir. Have a